right, so I don't know what it is that you're concerned about, but the fire marshal in construction.
And they can do inspections and they can enforce these
Yes, yeah.
violations.
So
Right now, they can't do anything like that.
So you're saying you want them to?
Yeah, that's all.
So do I.
Yeah, so how with this number? Like I said, they can put this is to get the person. Now, I also I can go
drive all the way out here to Seabrook, and then from Seabrook, you go all the way back the other side.
I think it's just but I just wanted to conquer and
Yeah, most
No,
times.
absolutely not. I'm not.
yeah,
This has to be the fire department.
so it's going to be a public safety.
Weak one person, a good one person could do it all.
A good one person did it.
Next meeting when I'm
It
gone.
doesn't have to happen. I mean, no, we just gotta.
I agree.
Are we ready? The hour of 1 o'clock is upon us. I would like to call the Town Council May 5th, 2026 council meeting to order. If I could ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is hidden away. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Bell.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brenner.
Here.
Mr. Farrell.
Here.
Ms. Kay. Here. Mr. Spencer.
Here.
Ms. Thorson. Here. Mr. McClung. Here.
Under tabs 1 and 2, we have the minutes of the April 7th Town Council meeting as well as the April 20 special call council meeting. Those have been provided in advance for members of the council to review and suggest any changes to the clerk. If there are no other changes, questions, or comments, then the minutes will be deemed approved. Next agenda item is citizen comments on agenda items only. Ms. McElvain.
Maura McElvain, 146 Blue Heron Pond Road. I have a couple comments. One is in the sense of a housekeeping question or comment, so I want to make it first. The agenda for this meeting was first published, at least as I saw it, on Friday late, and I printed it. This is what it looked like. And it had 197 pages of exhibits, some of which were included, and then again, there were some exhibits that were still empty. The point of we all know this, the point of the Freedom of the Right to Know Act is for transparency, for the community to get the information so they can actually meaningfully participate and understand what's going on. Giving me an agenda with 197 pages of attachments isn't necessarily the most transparent thing in the world, but I know that you deal with a lot of substantive things, including the budget, which happens to be on the agenda today. So I would ask, however, when you next print an agenda for this meeting, which is different, which came out sometime yesterday, and it has 2 additions, I wouldn't necessarily have gone and looked at the agenda, except I was communicating with someone from planning yesterday who told me something had been added to the agenda, which wasn't on the Friday agenda. Here's the new agenda. It's not marked amended agenda. It's not marked changed agenda. So you have to just know to go look. Now, that's really not transparent at all. Moreover, it includes items D and E under new business. E has a tab, except for the peons in the public, the tab is empty. And apparently it's empty deliberately. I'll get to that in a minute. Please, if you're going to change the agenda, mark it amended agenda. I don't think it's really fair, and I don't think it seems like a trap. The community has to check repeatedly to make sure they know what's on the meeting agenda after you've already posted the official agenda. I don't think that's really the most transparent way to deal with the community. Now, on E, As I understand it, you're going to vote on a settlement today which has the effect, potentially, of granting a variance to the property at 138 Blue Heron Pond Road. I'm at 146 Blue Heron Pond Road, so I know quite a bit about this. I attended the BZA hearing on this property, as did the mayor, by the way. The BZA rejected the variance request for 6-1 because the variance request of this applicant didn't meet many of the criteria under the ordinance of this town. The applicant wanted a platform for HVAC units in the setback. Well, actually, into the setback. And the BZA rejected it. I would encourage you to go back and look at the thinking and decision of the BZA. Section 163 of the town's ordinance gives the BZA 9 criteria they have to make sure are met before they can grant a variance. They found that many of the criteria were not met. But I also couldn't find anything in the ordinance that permits the council to grant a variance, which is essentially what you'd be doing, I think. Although I don't know exactly what the settlement is, it seems like the applicant's going to be allowed to put an HVAC platform in the required setback. I can find authority for the council to grant a variance under health and sanitation, Article 8, Section 8-117, but I cannot find it in the context of a BZA variance. In fact, I can't find it in the general counsel authority. So I do question what exactly your authority is to grant a settlement, the result of which is to go into the setback in my neighborhood. I can also tell you that there are multiple other places that don't require a variance where this platform could be granted, could be put. But here's the other thing you should know. On February 3, this body voted to authorize council to negotiate a resolution of this issue because the applicant lost 6-1 at the BZA and then appealed. They then requested mediation and the town went to mediation. That's how you got to February 3. By February 9, this applicant had had a drawing of another platform. There's a second platform this petitioner wants to put forward in the same setback, which is bigger for a generator. So the question I have is, what have you done here? You seem to have encouraged somebody to now violate the setback again, unless, of course, your settlement includes giving him a variance on that too. How do you think this is going to go? The BZA votes 6-1, and you're going to overturn the BZA's vote? Why have a BZA? Why have an ordinance that has 9 criteria that have to be met? When they're not met, you're going to allow a variance anyway. I know how the second application is probably going to go. And it's going to be a problem because you're creating a horrible precedent.
Thank you, Ms. McIlvaine. Mr. McIlvaine.
Brad McIlvaine, 146 Blue Heron Pond Road. To follow up on this settlement, we know when there's a zoning request or a request for a variance, they go through a process. There's advertisement, there's publication, there's notice to all the neighbors so that they can participate and have input. That was done with request to this variance request, and it was denied, 6-1 as noted. Again, I would urge you, as Moore did, to go back and look at the hearing. The record was horrible for the applicant. The applicant acknowledged that they knew they were going into the setback area. They knew it early in the project and didn't notify the town, even though the plans they'd submitted to the town showed it not going into the setback. At one point, one of the BZA members said, so you just got caught, because the contractor had said, well, we do this regularly. And he said, we just got caught this time. It was not a record that was a good record for the applicant, let's put it that way. But one of the things that we always know, because it's a requirement in any variance request, whether it's Town of Kew or anyone, it cannot be caused by the applicant, him or herself. This one was directly caused by the applicant. They decided they wanted to put their HVAC equipment in an area where they'd already built up to the setback line and then wanted to go beyond it. They are well below their requirements for coverage, so there are ample areas on their property that they could use to put this thing that wouldn't require variance. But they don't want that because they don't want to look at it. They want to have it so it's on the side where the neighbors look at it. But anyway, so they appealed. There's mediation. We're told there's an agreement, but we can't see what it is because mediation is confidential. Well, that's true to a certain extent. It's true unless the parties decide that they don't want it to be confidential. And one of the questions I have is why, when the town is entering into discussions, why doesn't the town say as a condition of us entering into discussions, these will not be confidential? In fact, confidentiality isn't the rule throughout the United States. In federal court, it's generally not, mediation discussions are generally not confidential. So you can't say, well, it always is confidential and it has to be confidential. People enter, I represented municipalities a lot, and you don't have to have them be confidential. The question is, so why didn't the town do that? And why didn't, at this point, can the town say, look, we understand there's an agreement, but we're not going to vote on this until we give the public an opportunity to look at the agreement and make comments on it, and then we'll vote on it. Now, we understand you may walk away from the agreement as a result of that, but if they do, doesn't that signify a bigger problem? I mean, why would the town and the applicant want this to be confidential and nobody to know? And then the ultimate question is, what are you really doing? Are you spot zoning? Because what you're doing is you're providing one exception to the zoning code. You're not amending the zoning code because you can't, because that would require a specific process that has to be gone through. You can't spot zone. That's illegal. And are you just granting a variance? What's your authority to do that without having the necessary, following the necessary procedures that are set up in your own ordinance? So the question I have is, you're entering into a settlement agreement. Do you have from your attorney an opinion that says what you're doing is legal under your own ordinances? I think it's not. That's only my view. But, but I think it's a legitimate question that you need to ask. For example, could you settle by paying off somebody? I think everybody'd say no, that would be illegal. You can't do a settlement that violates what your legal obligations. And are you doing that now? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McIlvaine. I would simply note at this juncture that the town has not granted a variance. This is a settlement of pending litigation, but counsel, the town attorney, and we'll go over kind of what the legal issues and process is when we get to that on the agenda, and we can then touch upon a couple of the policy considerations that you raised. But thank you for your comments. I appreciate it. Any other citizen comments on agenda items? If none, then I would ask Dr. Patrick Berneau to join us at the podium. The town has long utilized the services of Coastal Sciences and Engineering to monitor, broadly speaking, the health of our beach and dune system on Kiowa Island. They've provided their most recent report, which has been made publicly available. It's pretty extensive, a lot of charts and graphs, a lot of data. I trust that you'll provide a relatively high-level summary of that, and then we can entertain questions from my fellow council members. But the floor is yours.
So, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to say one thing really quick. I wanted the audience and actually the community to know they've been providing a report since 2007, I think, So this is not the first time they've done it. So they have a really good track record of what's been happening on the beach.
Oh, and, this is a periodically updated report. Do we do this annually or biannually?
Annually,
Annually, yes. So this is,
Right.
and it monitors changes since the prior year.
As well as from 2007, so it's a great report.
A lot of data.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much. As the mayor said, I'm Patrick Barano. I'm Vice President and Project Manager at Coastal Science and Engineering. And as they also mentioned, we've been working on Kiowa Island and the Charleston area for decades as a company. And I've been around for about 10 years at this point. So as the mayor pointed out, we conduct these annual monitoring surveys. They're typically conducted in the fourth quarter of the year, so anywhere from November to December, where we measure beach volumes out to a depth of about 10 or 15 feet of water along the entire island, from way up inside Stono Inlet all the way around to the west end of the island at Captain Sam's Inlet. And what we've seen over the decades as the major sort of foci in change on the islands are in the east, Stono Inlet. That's what's shown here on this kind of cartoon representation of the region. In the west, Captain Sam's Inlet, a much smaller system, but an inlet nonetheless. And then in between the two inlets in the middle of the island, relative stability, and I'll show you guys some data measured since 2007 that document this. In addition to the standard processes of sand moving, driven by waves and winds along the islands, which is not unique to Kiowa, it happens all over the world, we also have a couple of more regional considerations. For instance, from 2000 through 2012, not from 200 to 2012, we had less than 5 named storms impact Kiowa. They passed within about 60 nautical miles of the island. Since 2015, we've had more than 20. So we've definitely seen an uptick in the occurrence of named storms, as well as nor'easter type storms in the winter. And then sea level rise. Sea level rise in Charleston and the low country in general has long tracked on with the global average, but it's definitely been increasing in the last 10 to 15 years, to where now your average mean low water elevation at the Customs House in Charleston Harbor is a foot higher than it was in 2000. And it's highly likely that that metric is going to be, again, a foot higher than it is today by 2050. So that's kind of a medium to longer term consideration to make. So the way that we track these changes on the beaches is through profiles. These profiles run from typically just landward of the first stable dune that you don't really see a lot of change in the ground surface, all the way out to, as I said, about 10 or 15 feet of water. That's just where we measure the change, and we actually run the profiles out much further with our boat. Some of these profiles actually duplicate older OCRM series, so along individual profiles, we have data going back about 40 years on portions of Kiowa, which is a pretty remarkable data set. Outside of Jersey, Florida, and California, you don't really see data sets that last that long, typically, on beaches. It's not common, so it's something to be very proud of. And to sort of simplify the story of how the island changes into packets of sand and packets of property along the ocean front, we use reaches. So those reaches run from west to east, Kiowa Spit, West Beach Turtle Point, and then the Ocean Course Lagoon and Stono Inlet. And you'll see in our report in these slides, we generally refer to the 3 western reaches from the Spit to Turtle Point as the west end, the 3 eastern reaches from the Ocean Course around to the Stono Inlet as the east end. So very, very broad strokes conclusions here. These bars are the actual volumes of sand contained in the beach, averaged across those 6 reaches, again, from Kiowa Spit all the way to Stono Inlet. You can see just in a very general sense, our lagoon reach out here on the eastern end of the island contains vast sums of sand compared to our reaches further to the west, where they aren't as influenced by inlet bars and shoals as you are immediately adjacent to Stono Inlet. And you can also see some changes through time. So the left-hand most bar, these dark blue bars, are actually from April '99. And then here on the east end, we started our surveys in September of '06. And if you pay attention to the curve along the tops of these bars, what you'll notice is that along the lagoon, you have these oscillations between really significant growth and decay in our beach volumes. And then as that sand travels west, we see decreasing increases in beach volume moving from the Ocean Course to Turtle Point to West Beach and so on and so forth. It's almost like a wave of sand that runs down the island. So a couple of years ago, between about 2020 and 2023, there was a pretty massive shoal that attached on the east end of the island. Most of y'all are probably aware of this. It stopped feeding volume to the lagoon reach, where it actually attached seaward of the Ocean Course, in about 2023. Since then, we've observed 2 years worth of erosion along that reach, but it's thousands of feet seaward of the nearest inhabited structure, so it doesn't present an immediate hazard per se. It's just something to watch. because that water line will move relatively quickly over marsh versus higher dune ridges. So if you're out there, keep an eye on it. As we move west from that, again, we see these increases in volume at the ocean course, slightly less of an increase in volume at Turtle Point, and even slightly less of an increase in volume at West Beach. In the last year, West Beach actually lost a little bit of sand. Those losses were concentrated between the Beachwalker Park access point and Eugenia Avenue. And then Kiowa Spit barely changed, frankly, at least volumetrically. But it's continued to narrow at the thinnest part of the neck, and I'll show you guys some visuals of that in just a second. So put differently, if we're looking at our unit volumes from 1999 through 2025, and this is specifically over on the west end, we can see our April 99 volumes here in the royal blue curve. And then everything since then, if it's above the blue curve, it's an increase or an increase in volume, a good thing. If it's below the blue curve, it's a decrease in volume. And you can see right here, right along Eugenia and Mariner's Watch, that's pretty much the only place along West Beach where our volumes are actually a little bit lower than they were in April 99. You can also slice this a different way, shoreline position. So we compare the position of the 7-foot contour, which is about where the dune grass grows on the seaward edge of the dunes on Kiowa Island. And we can compare that back to August of 2007 for most of the island, actually, from Captain Sam's Inlet over here all the way to the beach club. And you'll see the same signature again. At the east end, along the ocean course, along the lagoon, you see big changes because those are the big bars and shoals that come in from Stono Inlet. Relatively speaking, areas to the west of the sanctuary are more static. They don't tend to change quite as rapidly because at that point you're away from the inlet. You're along what's more or less called a strand-type beach. And so the sand tends to stay along the beach between the dune and the water. Put differently, this is a fun chart. So we're going from bottom to top from 2013 to 2025. And then from left to right, these are the individual profiles along the front of the island. And these colors are coded based on the histogram of change over the last 10 or 15 years along Kiowa Island. So the brightest reds are in the 95th percentile of bad change or erosion. The brightest blues are in the 95th percentile of good change or accretion. And as you transition from those into pink and baby blue into white, you're seeing less and less magnitude in your change. And so indeed, if we look over here at Stono Inlet, boy, those are bright reds and blues because that is an absolutely phenomenal amount of sand that gets pushed out of that inlet onto the east end of Kiowa Island. As we move towards the west, and certainly once we get past about the ocean course into kind of the central third of the island, those colors tend to fade out because the net volumetric changes are a lot lower. But those can trigger really, really kind of minute parcel scale issues that I'll bring up here in just a second whenever we talk through some of these broader findings. So in general, a sort of prognosis for what the beach looks like across the island. Color-coded here like a stoplight, because the green arrow really isn't a problem. You've got shoal sand moving to the west. It's feeding all the way down through Turtle Point at this point, and we expect over the next 12 months for there to be some more dry sand making its way down past Mariner's Watch onto Eugenia and further west into West Beach, which is a very good thing. On the east end of the island, again, we've got these shoals and these channels associated with Stono Inlet and all the marshes that are way out there, thousands of feet seaward of the ocean course. That's something to keep an eye on. That's going to change really rapidly because those channels are small, those shoals aren't very high. So even a moderate minor storm is going to push stuff around in a way that's not going to be terribly predictable necessarily in that part of the island. Over on the western end of the island, we've got two areas that are color-coded in red because these probably deserve a little bit more immediate attention compared to the eastern end of the island. We've seen beach narrowing and dune recession, again, along Eugenia and Mariner's Watch. I was just out there earlier and have a couple of thoughts about what could be done. And then over on the far west end of the island, Kiowa Spit continues to narrow at its narrowest point, and this is triggering a breach hazard sometime in the next 10, 15, or 20 years, depending on storm frequency and how sea level rise plays out, which there's a lot of noise in those projections, so it's hard to be 100% sure. On the east end, we've seen net gains of almost 150,000 cubic yards in the last year, which is about 6 feet of dry beach width, if you convert that. You can see reach by reach, again, the lagoon kind of oscillates between accretion and erosion. We've entered that erosional phase in the last 2 years, which indicates the shoal attachment process is fully complete and sand is starting to make its way from the east end of the island towards the west. As a result, we've seen increases pretty significantly in volumes along the ocean course, shown here in dark blue. And we've seen a slight uptick beginning to show up all the way down, a slight uptick begin to show up over here in Turtle Point, which again, we anticipate is going to spread to the west towards West Beach. What's important to remember over on the far east end is that, last year I was here and we were talking about the potential of a channel encroaching on the driving range at the golf course. Well, again, a single relatively minor storm can move a channel like that thousands of feet over the span of just a couple of weeks. So as of December 25, whenever we conducted our survey, that channel had been displaced several thousand feet towards the north and it was no longer an apparent hazard. Again, that's going to change really rapidly. So out there on that end of the island, it's something that should probably just be assessed visually. And if you see that the channel is switching in the midst of an event like that, then we actually have a permit application submitted, and there's a what's called a programmatic biological opinion to allow work to kind of fix that hazard from, I believe, July through October that Fish and Wildlife has issued just here in the last 6 months or so. So we'll have that tool in the toolbox.
And Patrick, just on
Yes.
that point, permit is good essentially for 5 years, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, although under the programmatic biological opinion, because it's a programmatic BO, you might not have a permit the same way where it lasts for 5 years. It's just a box you check with Fish and Wildlife, so it's a much shorter process.
And can you tell us specifically what that permit will permit?
Yes, so it would emulate the 2015 channel relocation on the east end, where we essentially use land-based equipment to go and harvest sand from where we want the channel to be and use that sand to plug up the channel where we don't want it to be and effectively force the marsh to drain off to the east so that during high water events you don't see water getting alarmingly close to the driving range over around the ocean course.
And if we wanted to do this, how quickly could we marshal the resources to do this? I mean, is this months or is it weeks?
Oh, it's probably weeks. Yeah. So especially with the programmatic BO, the way that it's structured, we would have our full permits in hand from the state and the Corps sometime in the next month or two. I was talking to Stephen Tranum about this yesterday. He's been the main point of contact. And then once those are in hand, you can move to a project like that over the course of a month, maybe two. It's not a very quick process. They're just earth haulers. So I don't mean just earth haulers. They do very important work, but they're relatively easy to get to mobilize quickly.
Thank you.
Sure. Right, so next up, on the west end, we saw net gains. Again, we've got sand starting to come down through Turtle Point from the east end shoal attachment. But there's a really wide range in dune conditions, especially along the West Beach reach, where we did see net volume decrease. But along the western, half to 2/3 of that reach, you've got about 150 feet of vegetated dune between your building line and your dry sand beach. As you move east along Eugenia and up towards Mariner's Watch, that gets much, much thinner, down to about 50 feet. And granted, one of those dunes probably has an elevation of 15 or 16 feet above low tide, so it would take a pretty substantial storm to overtop that. That's the only ridge. There's kind of an incipient dune, is what we call it, right on the seaward side of the dune ridge that's growing. That incipient dune has probably grown in place since the nor'easters in December 23 and January 24. That's why it's so low. With the sand coming down from Turtle Point towards West Beach, you should see dry beach widths increase at West Beach this summer, certainly going into the summer. We'd expect to see that anyways. And so you should see better delivery of windblown sand into the dunes, which should help build that vertically a little bit in place. But that said, there's very, very easy, relatively low-cost impact things like sand fencing, for instance, that when you already have sand volumes in place and you already have native dune grasses growing in place, may represent the best, most effective option for trying to increase your dune elevation in the short term.
So just to be clear, that is an acceptable practice to put sand fencing in to create sand deposits around those sand fences and grow dunes?
Yes, I believe it's actually covered under a general permit by the state.
Great, thank you.
So it's, yes. Then on the far west end, Captain Sam's Spit continues to narrow. You can see here on the upper right in 2010, it was close to 400 feet wide from the high water line on the creek side to the high water line on the ocean side. As of September 25, it's down to about 200 feet. Which means we've been losing close to 20 feet per year over the last decade, and that's been alarmingly consistent in the image record. And if we want to preserve access to Beachwalker Park, preserving the life of that neck on the spit is crucial. And I've got another kind of follow-up thought on that with a slightly better picture of the area to explain here in just a moment. So net long-term sand budgets on Kiowa are positive, right? Y'all get a lot of sand from Stono Inlet, and very little sand goes from Captain Sam's Inlet towards Seabrook. And so that's why over time, over the last 150 years, Kiowa Island's prograded or built seaward. That doesn't mean there isn't erosion, right? Because this erosion is highly cyclical, as we can see over here on the lagoon volumes changing over time. And if we compare the island-wide volumes, from '07 to '15, we gained almost 2 million yards. From '15 to '19, lost almost 2 million yards. From '19 to '25, we've gained more than 1 million as that most recent shoal has attached. And that's a very natural process on barrier islands like Kiowa. Whenever you're adjacent to inlets, they behave in a very cyclical manner. Again, that doesn't mean that there aren't spot issues of erosion and habitat loss. For example, on the east end, because we have these massive changes in volumes, especially out there underwater, again, in a relatively minor storm, you can get water elevations that can really move those channels and shoals around thousands of feet at a time. So maintaining sort of a visual check on where that channel is located as it gets close to the club, as it gets closer to the driving range is extremely useful. It's the quickest and easiest way to keep tabs on that. Along Eugenia and Mariner's Watch, they have a relatively narrow vegetated dune buffer. I mentioned something as simple as sand fencing could be implemented on a parcel scale to help bolster dune growth over the incoming summer season when you'd expect to see more dry windblown sand. As a more medium to long-term strategy, these beach monitoring surveys are spaced, these profiles are spaced 500 feet apart typically. Some of them are even longer as we get out into the inlets just because of physical access problems. But if the town is interested in like a parcel level review of vulnerability based on dune crest elevations and dune widths, and trying to assess which areas of the island are most vulnerable under, say, different scenarios of sea level rise or different levels of storm impact, that's absolutely something that can be done. We would have to conduct a slightly different survey than the one that we use for the beach monitoring because it would be focused at a more finer level of detail, right? So we'd have to use slightly different hardware to do that. But it's a relatively simple set of calculations in engineering and science to come up with those recommendations. We would just need that data first to be able to do that. And then finally, Captain Sam Spit continues to narrow. We've seen beach volumes along the spit itself stay relatively consistent over the last 20 to 30 years as we've been surveying them. But we have seen gradual landward movement in the dune line. This is probably just simply a reflection of a combination of sea level rise and storm impacts. We've had a lot more storms over the last 10 or 15 years than we did the 10, 15 years before that. And water levels are about a foot higher than they were 25 years ago. So that's going to push the dune landward very naturally. It's something that we see in a lot of places. On the landward side of the spit, if you can see this linear feature out here in the marsh, at about 2010 or 2015, that was the bank of the creek. So all of this has grown in over the last 10 or 15 years. And as that marsh platform grows towards the south, it's displacing the channel in that creek towards the backside of the spit. And that's where we see really dramatic erosion of that cut bank on the outside of the turn out here. And I know that this came up last year whenever I was here, but currently under resource regulations, you can't just dredge a marsh. You can't just relocate a channel through a marsh, and with good reason. If you allowed that across the board, that could probably cause a lot of issues for people. However, in this case, if we're talking about what is ultimately going to be a property held in trust, and a very simple solution, which could be to excavate a very small portion of this marsh and use that material to construct living shorelines to help prevent encroachment of that bank on the other side of it, then you could extend the life of the spit by decades. And you could, in doing so, you could maintain the habitats on Beachwalker Park and the uplands that are adjacent to it and maintain the access to the park itself.
And is the permitting process any different from that than, for example, to inlet relocation or inlet cut?
No, it would definitely be a major permit, but the way that the rules are written specifically for marsh habitats are different, and you can't dredge marsh habitats. It's pretty verboten whenever we're talking about kind of public works scale, earth-moving coastal projects.
Is that federal or state?
Both. Yeah.
So I thought you mentioned a solution, so how do you dredge that marsh, or how do you cut that point off?
Well, we have lots of conversations with the resource agencies, and we figure out who has an issue with doing that and whether they're aware of the calculus here, which is to say, okay, well, you have to choose between what is, I do mean quite literally, a single digit, probably 4 or 5 acres worth of low marsh. And in sacrificing that, you're saving more than 100 acres of beach, dune, and maritime forest, as well as the public access on Beachwalker Park. So it's just making that clear and seeing what needs to be done, frankly.
So how long would that conversation require?
That would probably take well over a year, because it would be a major permit. It would definitely be a novel approach, because it's not something that typically gets done. And in that way, it would be very similar to the inlet relocation project, where it is very unique. And so there's lots of questions that come up.
And
that are unpredictable.
what do you estimate the odds are that that permit would be approved?
I don't know about that. I don't know if I can
Is
answer
there
that accurately.
any place in South Carolina where that has been done and they've got
Not that I'm
approval?
aware of.
Okay.
No. No.
Well,
Could be
and
very
the-
unique.
The, the inlet relocations have been 3 of those. It's
Yes.
kind of an unusual project as well, that involves trade-offs and different stakeholder interest. The question is kind of comparing different potential solutions. They should all be on the table, to look at is the most effective for protecting property in both Seabrook as well as on Kiowa Island and the park and public access. I mean, public access and maintaining the vitality, the health vitality of that unique ecosystem is the primary goal and objective.
Yes.
And to do that, there may be some other nearer term trade-offs that have to be realized.
Sure. Sure.
Do you do anything with measuring kind of the height of the dune on Captain Sam Spit or any place else for that matter? And is that changing or?
Not really, no. Not the height of the crest. It's more just the seaward edge just gets kind of chewed up every time a storm comes. Yeah.
Thank you.
So again, zooming back out here, at the east end, we've got these channels and shoals that are moving around that as they kind of push up against particular sections of the ocean course and the associated properties might be a cause for concern, but they're going to change very quickly. So a quick visual assessment at low tide is the best way to do that. And again, we're going to have permits in hand by the end of the summer to be able to conduct more or less emergency work as that arises as a need. As we move to the west, shoal stand continues spreading down coast. We expect it to start trickling its way into West Beach over the course of this summer, so there should be some increased dry beach widths compared to last year. And then again, the aforementioned question of dune width along particular sections of around Eugenia and Mariner's Watch, and whether or not the town would be interested in a more detailed vulnerability assessment of the dune habitats along the ocean-facing shorelines, as well as that breach hazard along Captain Sam's, or along Kiowa Spit and Captain Sam's Creek. So I'd be happy to take any more questions y'all might have. I'll
Well,
just
I know
leave that
it's
up.
not part of your presentation, but it was in the report,
Right.
is some sea level rise.
Yes.
Risk assessment as well. And I, maybe, you apparently don't have any slides on that, but, I focused on that as much as anything else in sand movement because it showed under various scenarios what the impact would be, and particularly on the back end of the island, Kiowa
Yes.
River Marsh side of the island, in terms of persistent or nuisance flooding, or maybe more than nuisance flooding.
Yes, yes. So this being, a beach monitoring program, we typically provide the sea level rise synopses as more or less you may want to know about this type section. Working on marshfront projects is a little bit different than working on beachfront projects because you're not just measuring volumes with, GPS. But in general, yes, the backside of the island, the creeks, the stormwater ponds are all going to be slightly more vulnerable to sea level rise than somewhat counterintuitively than a lot of oceanfront properties, because wind-driven waves on the ocean tend to build sand up vertically during storm events, and it stays there. Marsh creeks just run really fast at whatever level the water's at, and they tend to erode out. So yes, there's going to be some increased flooding by mid-century, and certainly the second half of the century. It's already happening around the whole Charleston region. I'm sure y'all are all aware, I've seen the newspapers.
So your report paints, I'll use the word scary, situation at Eugenia. It specifically states the elevation of the seaward dune toe is only 5 feet above the average high tide elevation. And you specifically state that one storm will severely threaten that location. What can we do about that?
Right, so that small dune that sits, just about 5, maybe 6 feet above the normal high tide line is that dune that I referred to earlier that's probably been built in place since the nor'easters, just visually assessing it. And because there's already native dune grass growing in, you can't excavate it, you can't really manipulate it because that's not typically permissible. But what you can do is you can encourage the growth of that dune vertically. Now the way that you can do that is by importing sand from an upland source, or you can install additional grass as well as sand fencing. And so at this point, given that you already have a dune that's, a couple of feet, 2, maybe 3 feet in places high off the actual, dry beach berm, and it's already being colonized with native dune grasses, typically in that scenario, as a consultant, our recommendation would be to at least consider sand fencing, because that could help catch more sand, and as it catches more sand, it would encourage the grass to grow in place. If you wanted to be more thorough about treatment in that area, you could add additional dune grasses, but because they're already established, you might not need to. They're already growing in naturally, and they love to be buried. And so as they get buried, they'll grow and colonize more. So the immediate thing to look into would be establishing sand fencing along portions of Eugenia where there's a concern over the width of the dune. That would be the easiest way and the cheapest way to get something done that could help, at least before we get into the middle of the summer when most of the windblown sand tends to move around.
I've got a question. So I walk down that stretch of beach pretty regularly, and there's a number of places where boardwalks are cutting into the dune and where the dune's been encroached on by buildings. What does that do to the risk to that dune? I would think, intuitively, me would think it puts it more at risk, but what's your thoughts on that?
It can, yeah. And that would be the type of question that with that slightly different type of survey and a vulnerability assessment, we could answer that almost parcel by parcel. But in short, yes, it would increase vulnerability because a low dune is going to be more susceptible to water getting up and over and through the crack during a storm event. But that's just at the location where it's actually lower. Another thing to consider on, say, the landward side of the dune is that there's a typical recommended cross-section that FEMA actually publishes for flood risk guidance. And that cross-section is about 540 cubic feet above your stormwater level. And so if you have a dune that is about 540 feet above your stormwater level, then according to federal guidelines, it should be able to withstand at least a 10-year storm, right? And so that would be the basis in my mind for any sort of, assessment of what you would want to see would be, let's start with that number, and then let's see what that looks like on Kiowa, because every island's a little bit different, slopes are different, vegetation's a little bit different. And that's where the survey would help a lot. But in general, yes. Yeah, anything that reduces either the height or the net volume of the dune increases vulnerability in a very localized sort of way, too.
Thank you.
So again, but to dunes, am I correct in my understanding that once you have sand and you start to establish vegetation like seagrasses and then small oak trees and things like that, that stops the sand migration and actually causes the dune to grow? So vegetation is a benefit to increasing the dune size rather than anything else, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Sand fencing as well, yeah, and anything to obstruct the wind.
The other thing, just for the record, you keep saying things you could do looking at us, like all of that space in front of Eugenia specifically, but up and down the whole beach. Most of that land is generally owned by the community association. So it's really a task for the community association to think about. We might be able to assist in certain areas, but that's all private property.
Sure, no, that's a fair point, and that came up whenever we were discussing this report with the mayor and some of the town staff, and I think we actually adjusted some of the language in the report to reflect that, and to not just put the onus on the town by
Yeah,
itself.
we'd love to help. where we
That's not
can.
the intent at all.
It's just simply a recognition of the fact that in contrast to some of your other clients or communities, there is actually publicly owned beach.
Sure.
In the case of Kiowa Island, the town doesn't actually own any beachfront property. We are the stewards of the public trust land, but that's only mean high tide line seaward.
Sure.
The rest of the beachfront is either owned by, most of it is by the community association, or occasionally private property owners and or Kiowa partners.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions.
Oh, sure.
So just by way of background, the folks out there should know that this report starts off by saying that we've got a long-term healthy sand supply, island contains diverse habitats, et cetera. We're very fortunate in that the island's developers had an understanding of the island's processes and landforms. So that all made Kiowa a very excellent example of beachfront development and aesthetically unique community. Along the South Carolina coast, it also mentions that our setbacks our aggressive setbacks kind of set a standard for the state and really helped over the long term to protect Kiowa's beaches. There are several instances where the threat to Eugenia are cited, and that is a kind of a unique spot here on the island. The other unique spot is down at the Spit, and I had a couple of questions about your findings there. You mentioned that when Sequoia and Kiowa agreed that periodic forced relocation of the inlet within a defined management corridor was a preferable alternative to allowing the natural breaches to occur. What do you think about the proposed cuts to the inlet that have been discussed recently? And your history with looking at this island? Any recommendations on that front, or have you not had the opportunity to study that more specifically?
And if I may, join that with any suggestions or comments you might have about how that affects Seabrook as well.
Sure. So Coastal Science and Engineering submitted that permit application. We've been the
When?
ones. I'm sorry?
When?
Late last year, I believe, or early this year.
So I would just note that I certainly welcome Dr. Barno's views and perspectives on this, but they submitted that application. They're representing SEPOA in submitting that application.
Seabrook Community Association.
Yes.
Yes, the
Yes.
Seabrook Community Association.
Okay.
So, I mean, we're going to have to go through, the town's going to have to go through a fairly extensive process. I would, welcome town attorney's view on this. The CSC has been a longtime advisor to the town with respect to its beach restoration projects, but it's specifically representing SEPOA with regard to that application. So it may be incumbent upon there, may be a conflict of interest issue that may arise and may be incumbent on the town ultimately to get the services of another consultant to evaluate the any proposed inlet relocation or these other alternatives suggested by Dr. Barno with regard to dealing with the marsh to relieve pressure on the neck rather than doing in lieu of doing an inlet relocation. But we've got a lot of work to do. But please go ahead and you can say what you got, what's in your application, but just note that it's an application on behalf of SEPOA.
Yeah, and I was going to say, those are engineering conflict of interest standards, which differ from those of lawyers. So I'm sure you and Stephen and your crew can evaluate that. But they certainly are representing SEPOA's interest in that application, not the town of Kiowa Island's interest.
My opinion as a professional geologist in the state of South Carolina is that that project would have no negative impact on Kiowa Island's beach volumes, certainly from the perspective of the beach monitoring program that we've been working with y'all on for decades.
I appreciate that, but that is, I guess, the limitation of your professional opinion in that regard. The environmental impacts are something that would not be within the ambit of that analysis. That is, impacts on
Birds,
shorebird
animals.
nesting, marine mammals, strand-feeding dolphins, denning bobcats, etc.
Well, we actually conduct environmental review as part of that monitoring program per permit conditions for that project. And the finding has been very similarly that there's not a negative impact of those projects on habitat extent, on animal behavior, on populations.
Okay, I have another question. At one point, the report, and by the way, this is an extraordinary report.
Thank you.
I don't enjoy reading all of these all that often, but this one I really like. Anyway, given the uncertainty surrounding the intensity and the timing of storm impacts, as well as the precise rate of relative sea level rise over a approximate 20-year horizon, it's possible that a breach, and we're talking down Spit, breach could occur naturally from far sooner than 2045. Based on site conditions in the 1940s when such a breach last occurred naturally. A breach would threaten public access to much of Beachwalker Park as well as the developed properties just east of the public access point at Beachwalker Park. My question is, does that include the Cape and the timbers?
Is that the
Threatened.
new-ish building next to that access point? Yes.
Okay, and then for anybody out in the community that's interested, the report ends with four findings and recommendations. And again, this is not as intimidating as it may look. It's really interesting reading for those of you who are interested in beach health and environmental impacts. So thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
I want to echo that, and we've discussed more positively sending this out to the community. It looks intimidating, but it's really not. You got to be deliberate reading it. But if I read this and I had beachfront property in the areas you're talking about, I'd be at the podium asking the town or the community association or somebody to be doing something about it.
I'm sorry, I do have one more question.
Sure.
Given the fragility or the vulnerability of the properties along Eugenia, have you ever seen where a beach overlay district has helped to mitigate any of these circumstances?
I'm not familiar with that. I'm not an attorney, and that's typically not the type of question specifically legally that I handle. No, I have not dealt with that before.
Thank you.
Thank you, though.
Thanks,
Thank
Joe.
you for this is a great report. It's very helpful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Barno. Appreciate it very much. Very good. Moving on, updates. I will begin. I demurred on last council meeting for many updates. There will be a few this time. But first, less than an update. It's actually something that I will do with pleasure. If I could ask Mr. Edgerton or Mr. Sosnowski to join me at the podium. Good afternoon, gentlemen. We're getting ready to enter the height of the tourist season, and we're going to have a lot more activity on the beach. And I think we all want everybody to be very safe on the beach. I think everyone knows that Mr. Edgerton and Mr. Sosnowski are principals of Barrier Island Ocean Rescue, but they're more than that. I'm not sure about you, Sos, but I know, Rob, you are also president of the Charleston County Lifeguard Association, affiliated with the U.S. Lifeguard Association. I think vice president of the South Atlantic chapter of the Lifeguard Association. Former? Okay. Well, you bona fide credentials. So in recognition thereof and the importance of ensuring that their job isn't made more difficult by the lack of education and awareness of safe activities on and around the beaches, I am offering this proclamation, which I will now read. The Town of Kiowa Island Beach Safety Week proclamation. Whereas the town of Kiowa Island has 10 miles of Atlantic coastline that serves as an important recreational resource for our community, and whereas the aquatic environment presents inherent dangers, particularly rip currents, which can be effectively managed through public awareness and education, and whereas the aquatic environment has dangers that can be effectively managed through public awareness and the vigilance of professional lifeguards, and whereas, for reasons of public safety, an annual reminder of both the joys and the hazards associated with the aquatic environment is appropriate at the commencement of the busy summer beach season, and whereas residents and visitors of Kiowa Island must remember to, these are all capitalized, learn rip current safety, never swim alone, designate a water watcher, recognize that alcohol and water don't mix, and beat the heat and block the sun. Now, therefore, I, Bradley D. Belt, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the town of Kiowa Island, do hereby proclaim May 18th through the 25th, 2026 as Beach Safety Week in the town of Kiowa Island, joining communities across the country in observance of National Beach Safety Week, and urge all residents and visitors using our beach to enjoy themselves this season while taking every appropriate measure to protect themselves and their loved ones. And you all, I know, will do your job to make sure they're protected as well. Thank you all very much for your... Few other updates. At last council meeting, we moved to consideration on second and final reading the beach overlay district that was unanimously recommended by the Planning Commission. During that meeting, we determined to defer consideration and remand to the Planning Commission further action on the beach overlay district. And 2 weeks ago, there was another public workshop. The Planning Commission members, staff, and council members have continued to engage on that. There are a number of changes that have been are being made on second in advance of second and final reading. Those will be considered by the Planning Commission at the meeting tomorrow afternoon, I believe at 1 o'clock. That will be yet another opportunity for community members to engage and review the revised language. I won't go into detail. Mr. Taylor and the chair of the Planning Commission, Joanne Hennessy, will do so tomorrow. But I would note that in addition to what we had already previously confirmed, that no property owners anywhere on the island would be required to change anything with regard to their current structure or use of their properties. That's always been true. There were some questions, and legitimate questions, concerns about the application of the town's nonconformity rules with regard to properties that would be in buffer zone A and B. Those have been clarified, and rather than create some conflict with existing zoning standard 12192, the nonconformity rules will be standalone within the beach overlay district. There was some confusion, and probably unnecessary confusion, about the 150-foot rule and the map that the planning director showed with all the hashed areas, which has kind of gotten rid of that. We've worked with Kika and other community members to clarify issues with regard to landscaping, and one still has the ability, a property owner, to, even within zones A and B, to fully repair, restore, and remodel homes and do so in a grandfathered way as long as they don't increase and enlarge the nonconformity. So all of that will be addressed in more detail tomorrow. We've, I think, collectively as a town and a community done our very best to onboard all the questions and comments and concerns that have been raised and try to account for as many interests as possible to kind of reach as far as we can to allow or grandfather existing activities, but while still maintaining the inherent purpose and integrity of the beach overlay district. And I anticipate that after a recommendation is forthcoming from the Planning Commission tomorrow, that the beach overlay district will be back on the council's agenda for next month's meeting. Captain Sam Spit, been getting a number of questions about the status of that. I don't know if the town attorney has any updates within the last 24 or 48 hours, but where we are is the state has still not yet funded its financial commitment to the settlement agreement. I believe it's in conference right now. Between the House and the Senate, a number of competing budget priorities. There are, 2 weeks now? Less than 2 weeks, this week and next week, until adjournment sine die. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. I will reiterate, as I have before, and I believe this is the view of my fellow council members, that the town is committed to ensuring the protection of Captain Sam Spit and its natural state in perpetuity, as well as ensuring public access to Beach Walker Park in perpetuity. And regardless of what transpires with regard to the state's funding or not of its commitment, we will adhere to that those objectives. A quick little update on Betsy Carson Parkway. Many of you will notice that since the town obtained ownership over the inbound lanes of Betsy Carrison Parkway from the State Department of Transportation. We started to undertake some remediation work, long-needed remediation work, starting right at the intersection of Resurrection Road and Betsy Carrison Parkway, which used to be filled with potholes, and worse, was a chronic flooding problem. We hired True Luck. They engaged in some regrading and drainage work, as well as a significant repatching work. And at least our first test, a couple of itches this weekend, and no flooding at that site. So it's smoother, hopefully no flooding, and we're continuing to engage in some landscape enhancements. We are still working with the county, and the town attorney's had discussions with his counterpart on Charleston County to obtain ownership over the outbound lanes up to Resurrection Road, so we can continue to engage in some remedial work and some landscaping enhancements. I think that's moving in the right direction. Mr. McQuill can suggest if it is otherwise. I guess I had an opportunity to present before the Charleston County Council about our interest in all the reasons that we wanted to obtain ownership and the remedial projects we wanted to undertake. And I think that was generally well received. The concern expressed by one council member was that we were going to put up a gate on Betsy Carrison Parkway. Of course, suggested that that wasn't legally possible, and there was no intention to do so, but nonetheless, that will be a deed restriction if we do get conveyance from the county, and we're happy to have that be a deed restriction. Not much to update on the Civic and Cultural Center. We're in the process now of moving into the design development phase. We've onboarded since our last meeting, Edifice Construction as the construction manager at risk and begun pre-construction services. That work is continuing. I want to commend all the building committee members, and particularly Council Member Berner, who's part of the building committee, for his close attention to wide range of issues regarding our contract with both our architect and the construction manager. And I appreciate the engagement of some members of our community, one of whom is in the audience now, and he'd be providing additional comment, which we very much welcome. One of the issues that was kind of a key recommendation of the Kiowa Next from the Planning Commission in the Comprehensive Plan was the establishment of a Kiowa Island Alliance. We have now scheduled for, I believe, May 20th. Is that right? Wednesday, May 20th, the first meeting of the Kiowa Island Alliance. The idea there is to provide a forum for key island stakeholders to sit down and talk about issues that are truly cross-cutting, that can't be addressed by any one of the entities, but require cooperation and collaboration amongst all of them. We've talked about a couple of today, as a matter of fact, issues regarding stormwater management or management of the beach and dune system when there are different ownership interests. Stephanie and I have been working on a notional agenda, working with other key stakeholders. If council members or any other members of the community have suggestions for issues that we might discuss, we'll consider those and see whether there's general agreement on what we can talk about. Need to understand that the Alliance is not a decision-making body. It's a body or a forum to discuss these issues, and maybe it lends itself to memoranda of understanding or other agreements, and that would be very useful. I don't want to steal her thunder, but Councilmember Kay, I want to commend Councilmember Kay and the Resiliency Committee and the Environmental Committee and your subgroup for your extraordinary recent Kiowa conversations. You can provide more detail on those, but they've been very well attended and very educational, and we look forward to those continuing. The last thing I will note is that the town is partnering with the Conservancy of the Sea Islands on their monthly litter sweep. It's usually focused just on Kiowa Island. This time, it's not only going to be on Kiowa Island, but we're actually going to work on cleaning up some of the way too much trash that is in the median and right-of-ways along Betsy Carson Parkway. So I would welcome the involvement of the entire community in that effort, and we'll be providing all the resources necessary for that to happen. That's on Saturday, May 16th. That is my update. Councilmember Berner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have an unusually long update, but I'll abbreviate it as much as I can. I'm going to work backwards chronologically. Upon receipt of this coastal science report, on April 29th, I met with Tom Nevin from the club. They have a risky cut through the dunes, and I discussed with him with detail about what has to be done because that cut that they have through the dunes is going to be a highway for water to get through when the storm occurs. He agreed, and he and I are going to meet again about the next steps for him correcting that problem. April 28th,
Russ,
yes, ma'am.
is that cut through at the club?
The Beach Club. April 28th, the Community Emergency Response Team tested our activation alert system for the team members. We found holes in the communication matrix, and we are working to fix those because the hurricane system is becoming close in time. Again, on the 28th of April, the cultural facility, Mr. Mayor indicated we had a detailed design kickoff meeting. I brought up a lot of control issues with respect to cost and schedule and, more importantly, safety of what need to be incorporated into the construction management contract. That's based on my many years of experience. And we started discussion about what has to be done for earthquake design. We actually are in an earthquake zone C. So certain things do need to be done for the design of the facility. The CERT team is also working towards participating in the Swim Across America event, which is 1 month away on June 6th. We monitor and look for distressed swimmers from the beach. And this is a very worthy cause that is for raising money for cancer research. On April 21st, we had the beachfront overlay meeting that the mayor just discussed. A lot of detailed information was thrown out there. I had performed some analysis of the existing site plans that were in our files and learned that all of those site plans that we have available, the homes were already at basically the limit of their lot coverage for the primary residence. The majority were at 32.8%, and we only allow 33%. So many of the complaints from the owners, particularly along Eugenia, that they can't expand really doesn't hold water because they can't expand as of right now today without the overlay. Some important things came out of this meeting. Comments from many in the community were, the town's looking for a problem to fix. Why are we doing this? Or the beach is accreting along Eugenia, so there's no need to do the overlay. The coastal signs and engineering report we just had a presentation of indicated that for the island of Kiowa, we grew by 178,000 cubic yards, which is a good thing. However, the report also said along Eugenia, we actually lost 26,000 cubic yards. That's part of the concern, one of the main reasons why we're considering this beach overlay. Another important thing from the report, and I'm going to reference, it is figure 4.13. This figure is really important. It highlights the dune location throughout the entire island, and it shows that when the reports, since the report the data was originally collected in 2017, the dunes at the Eugenia location have actually moved 15 feet inland. They're moving. Eugenia is very fragile. And even more important, that same chart, 4.13, said between 2024 and 25, they moved 5 feet inland. There is a high risk at Eugenia that we need to take care of. A couple of quotes from this report. Page 42. A number of properties located along Eugenia Avenue, in particular, contain minimal or sparsely vegetated dune buffers. In this area, a single storm, paren, or series of smaller storms in quick succession, close paren, could easily overtop the dune, leading to property damage and or flooding. Clearly, we have empirical data that is telling us that we, the town, and the community and Kika need to do something. There's a lot of people complaining or worried about loss of property values. I got it. I completely understand it. I would also be concerned if I had an oceanfront firm. But based on this report that we just received, and remember, this is not a one-off report. We've been having this report prepared since 2007. I would be more concerned if we didn't do something. The probability of a storm overtopping these dunes and affecting the fragile system along Eugenia Avenue is very high, and we have to do something. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Brewer. Councilmember Kay.
Thank you. There are several more quotes in this report that mimic the one that Russ just referenced. The fragility, vulnerability of properties along Eugenia can't be understated, and the importance of that dune infrastructure in safety along Eugenia and of the inland areas really can't be overstated. So thank you. A couple of comments to follow up on what the mayor said about the committees that are contributing to Kiowa Conversations. That's our environmentally oriented educational series that we started in January. I really think that all of us involved in this initiative are surprised with how successful it's been, how popular it's been. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, I think it reflects the community's very genuine interest in the environment and appreciation of the fact that where we live is such a special place. We've had standing room only attendance at almost all of our programs. We had, and this reinforces the need for the expansion of this facility into a civic center, since we're getting upwards of 100 people who can no longer fit in this room every week or two for these presentations, and the expanded civic center would really enhance this program. The program on alligators, we were so lucky to have Thomas Rainwater come out. Some of you who read the Post and Courier have probably seen a recent story about his efforts with alligators over the last 25, 35 years, all over, up and down the coast of South Carolina, but specific to Kiowa. And he talked about all of the data we need to know about mating season and number of fertile years that a female alligator has, and the number of eggs that she lays, and how they protect their nest, and what's threatening their nest to the environmental impacts of the alligator population, and how because of the increasing brackish water pollution of their waterways. They're having to move inland, and the likelihood of more and more encounters between humans and alligators is very likely. So it was a hugely educational program. We've had programs on turtles, on shorebirds, on dolphin strand feeding, on composting and recycling. The recycling is so misunderstood here on Kiowa, and no blame to be attached here, because the rules around recycling on Kiowa are somewhat different than the ones you maybe have grown up with, or that your kids brought home from school back when recycling became a thing. But the rules here are very specific to Charleston County, and so things that I thought were fine to recycle are not fine to recycle. So we're bringing back that speaker, and instead of doing a field trip up to North Charleston, we're going to bring her here, and that's one of the programs we'll have in the fall, and I will be strongly encouraging people to attend or to watch our broadcast 2 or so weeks after that, to find out, to ask all the questions they need to ask about what really can be recycled here. And then finally, we just had a program on composting, and I never thought I would see the day when I would compost, but I've started. And in a couple of weeks, we'll be able to post that, the rebroadcast of that presentation as well, and I will encourage you to watch it, because it's amazing what a little effort can generate in terms of compostable material, and then we feed that up to the authorities. They bring it back to us. You can use it in your gardens and your lawns, and it's really a worthwhile enterprise. Getting off of, yeah, I know, I'll step off of that when I move on. We had a good presence at Earth Day. I want to thank Neil and his team for putting together a loop presentation for all to see on the various initiatives we have here at the town to support environmental efforts, including all the different Go Green programs that have kicked into gear over the last year. And if anybody is interested in some of the Kiowa Conversations programs we've got coming up, we've got a training on resiliency that's for all of us on my committee as well as the Planning Commission coming up on May 20th. So other council people should feel free to attend. We've got shifting sands. We've got a native plant tie-in with the Conservancy in October when they do their Beneath the Oaks programs. We'll have an update on the manufactured wire reef project. The ponds, Ryan Elmers and Matt Hill from Kika are going to be presenting on the whole pond infrastructure and how that helps us to manage our stormwater, et cetera. And we've got programs that are in the works or being thought about forever chemicals, wildlife updates, turtle updates, seagrass basket updates, and I could go on and on. But that's what we've been working on, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the nod of appreciation. We do really appreciate it.
Councilmember Farrell.
Just 3 quick things. May 28th, we have our first State Accommodation Tax Committee meeting. This is a meeting where the town allocates, it will be this year, $600,000 to outside entities to broadly increase and maintain tourism. I mean, we live and die by tourism to a great extent on this island, so we want to reinvest in that business, and so the town this year is allocating, again, $600,000 of its revenues back to the community to do that. So that'll be our first meeting. Second is the Audit Committee. This year, our first meeting is going to be June 18th. We're going to undertake a cyber controls audit this year, much like our financial controls and processes we did last year. That was the big concern I had, was making sure we were financially sound. Cybersecurity is right behind that because a lot of financial fraud occurs through cyberspace. So we want to make sure that while the controls are in place, that the systems we have are set up such that we are, again, further protected there. Again, that happens June 18th, and we have a couple of folks on the committee who have great expertise in cybersecurity, so I'm really excited about that. And the third thing, and Mr. Berner, I'm going to apologize up front. I just want to clarify one of your remarks. You mentioned one of the major reasons for the beach overlay district was erosion. And it's on the list, but it is clearly not one of the major things. Since I was one of the early architects of this, the two major things are really to protect the aesthetic value and character of Kiowa, and there's more that goes with that. And second thing is preserve sensitive wildlife habitat and ecosystem. Maintain those dune systems. That's really what's important. Other thing about protecting the function of the dunes, balances the reasonable use of private property for the long-term interests of people using the beach, encourages development practices that have to do with changing coastlines, promotes environmental stewardship. And lastly, it does talk about minimizing future costs associated with storm damage, flooding, and erosion. So clearly erosion is on the list, but it's not one of the major reasons we're doing this. It's on the list, but it's at the bottom of the list, quite frankly. It's really, again, to protect the aesthetic of Kiowa, protect the character of the beach, and to protect our environmental stewardship efforts through maintaining a wildlife corridor up and down the beach. So I apologize, but I wanted to make sure that
Well, I
you
think this
knew
is
what the
all
major
wrapped up.
reasons were.
It's all part of, it's all wrapped up together. You can't have what you're discussing without the dunes.
I'm
in
just
place.
clarifying what the major reasons for the overlay were. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Spencer.
I have just a couple things. The Infrastructure and Public Works Committee is going to meet this Thursday from 10 to 12. It's a public meeting, just as everybody's aware. Several things we're going to cover in this one. An update on the cell tower upgrades and getting fiber run to homes that don't have it. Mr. McIlvain and Mr. Mancusi-Anguro have been leading the charge on creating an ordinance for franchise agreements and managing utilities and their relationship. That's a gap that we've got in our ordinance structure and how the town conducts business with these entities. So recently, with the mayor and the town administrator, we met with outside counsel to progress that. So that will be coming down the pike sometime this year. Leisure Trail extension, Mr. Gottschalk's been making progress on that. We met with Berkeley Electric, the mayor, administrator, public works director, myself, and Jody Forrest from Kika met with Berkeley a few weeks ago. There's been a string of outages that have affected people the last several months. Berkeley's hesitant to release what they consider proprietary kind of information to a larger public setting, but they've shared planning information with us, investment information, things like that, and a much closer look at what they're doing on the island to maintain service, have resiliency, upgrade aging infrastructure, things like that. So we're going to have a continuing set of conversations with them. It's been great. I see one of the Kika board members here, Paul, that Jody has been a great partner with that, as he is with so many things. But in fact, we had an outage about 2 days later, and Jody copied the town administrator and I on a query he made to Berkeley. So we're all trying to streamline communications and collaborate and cooperate. I've been talking to business owners in Freshfields, just as I'm out and about. And it's interesting, the market uptick in patronage that I'm hearing about. A lot more traffic is going through the restaurants and stores, which is good if you're in business to a point, I guess. It could get bad if it tilts too far. And the sentiment that as Johns Island's building out, that's driving a lot of the traffic, which patronage is traffic, but cars are traffic too, and things like that. And I know we talk about it in Kiowa Next, and I've expressed my sentiment before that we need to be really mindful about what needs we satisfy with things down in the Freshfields and our area and our part of Johns Island, because as Johns Island builds out, they're going to go to the closest place they can go, and that may be Kiowa. So we're bringing traffic to us. Build it, they will come. And we're bringing traffic to us as we continue to work with the county council and others and city of Charleston. I think it's important that we try to push for providing goods and services at the point of need. and closer to the Maybank corridor, which it was more designed for, even though it hasn't been robusted to do that. So anyway, it's a sentiment that as there's a lot of plates spinning and activities going on different fronts about, what kind of services and goods we want closer to Kiowa. But the downside is that will bring more traffic to Kiowa. So we just need to be considering that, I think, as we're taking various actions. I think that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Spencer. The town administrator.
Yes, so I just wanted to let council know that the mayor and I, along with Director Harris, met with Director Way and Chief Connoisseur just about, I believe, last week or so, just to, essentially, they wanted to update us on EMS services response times. Overall, I think on average, and Mayor, please chime in, the response time dropped by just under 2 minutes. But they did acknowledge that we're approaching the summer months, so they'll probably see an increase in the volume of service, but they will see a decrease in response times transport, and mainly because of the MUSC that is open. They're not having to transport every time downtown. Now, of course, depending on the severity of the individual, they may have to transport downtown, but right now they can go right over to Freshfields there. So that has really helped with regards to decreasing their response time. As you all may know, we have Station 10 right here next to us, and then of course we have 2 stations on the island. They have switched over February of this year to a EMS station-based model. Before, they used to have more of a, what was the model called? I think it's more of a response type model where the EMS station may be located in North Charleston, and depending on the call, then they disperse the vehicle from that location or other location that may be stationed in a hot spot. So now they're going back to their old model, which is more station-based, and so that is helping with, I think, also the response time. Right now, we also talked about kind of future plans. Right now at Kiowa River, as part of the PUD plan development, there was I guess, a joint county services there where you will have fire and EMS and probably the emergency management location. St. John Fire would move there first. I think they anticipate moving there in about the next year or two, and then possibly an EMS station will open up there as well. They said maybe by 2030 they will have that location. We asked them what would happen to Station 10. They're not sure right now. They could leave this open or use this building for some other county services, or they may sell the lot. But right now, they have future plans to kind of create a joint EMS and fire station in Kiowa River. So I think all in all, we had a pretty good report. We have agreed that we will meet as needed, or at least do a check-in maybe quarterly in case there's anything that we want to discuss with them or any updates that they want to provide us. Is there anything that you want to add to that before I move on?
Actually, thank you for recapping that meeting. I would just emphasize, I thought it was a very constructive meeting, not just because of the update that we received in terms of service levels, but also kind of the renewed degree of cooperation and collaboration between St. John's Fire District and Charleston County EMS. Suffice it to say, a much better relationship now as a result of Chief Way coming on board than I think had previously existed. But the other thing I want to emphasize is it kind of reinforces how well positioned we are from a first responder capability here on and around Kiowa Island, and really supports the investment the town and the rest of the community has made in upgrading our first responder infrastructure. obviously, MUSC has been critical to that. Having another ambulance there has been critical from a transport standpoint. But, providing the investment to so that St. John's Fire District can provide better advanced life support services here on island at Station 4 and Station 6, to have a 24/7 quick response squad and vehicle stationed at Station 4 with a paramedic. They may be expanding that, so there's another squad on Station 6. And so it's really a kind of a good news story for the community. And obviously, given the age of this community and aging of the community, having life support services readily available is critically important. That add to that Barrier Island Ocean Rescue and all the ALS capability they have, not just on the beach, but generally on the island as well. So I thought it was very, very helpful. And they are more than willing to continue to monitor the need for additional services. Mentioned high season. If there's a need to pre-position additional resources and response times are slipping, they're willing to talk about adjusting that.
Thank you. And then just wanted to let everyone know, I'm sure everyone remembers that turtle season started May 1st, so lights out. We'll be making sure we push that out as a reminder. Disaster Awareness Day, it is May 29th at 10 a.m. here. If it's not on your calendar, this is a joint event that we put on with Seabrook. This is our year to host it, so it'll be here. And Meredith and her team and Director Harris and his team are working behind the scenes to make sure that's a great day. Just from an operational standpoint, business license DeRota's team that closed in terms of, so you're not penalized in terms of late fee, that closed April 30th. We have approximately 700 or so outstanding licenses as of Monday. Maybe some have come in. Out of that, about just over 1,300 short-term rental, over 1,400 are regular licenses. So we still have about 700. And her team, essentially they'll send letters out. Director Harris' team, from a code enforcement standpoint, if they see anyone out there operating without a license, they will work with them to try to make sure that we get those licenses in. Or if they're no longer operating on the island, we still need for them to close out their license because they're paying basically in arrears. So we would just need to make sure they close out their licenses if they're no longer operating on the island. And then I'd like to close with just a couple of updates. We have a new employee, Lincoln. He started last month. He is a CSO. I can't read my writing. Is it how you pronounce his last name? Okay, Lincoln. We're going to call him Lincoln. And we have a couple employees that have anniversaries. Sherry, who is clerk to the judge and also our accounts receivables and handles our trash billing. She celebrated 10 years with the town. We have Brian Gottschalk, who's our public works director. He's celebrated 7 years with the town. We have Daniel Vinson, who works under John Taylor, one of our planners, celebrating 3 years. And then we have Neil, who's sitting behind the desk there, and Petrea celebrating 2 years. So, thank you.
Ms. Tilson, may I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
So I think nobody would disagree, Kiowa has a lot of rules. To that point, May 1st, turtle season begins. Do we do anything proactive to notify folks who live on the beach to turn their lights off, or are they just expected to know, or how does that happen?
What we've done is, I believe we normally push something out on our e-blast. So I'm looking for Meredith. We do push information out in our e-blast, and of course we are updating our Good Neighbor brochure so that in all of the short-term rentals, that a lot of our property management companies utilize that. They have that information with regards to lights out. We also typically put something out on the beach. I know our beach patrol, Glenn, who manages that, have a little yard signs that we put out during turtle season. And then just our CSO and our Barrier Island, who helps with our code enforcement, because they're here in the evening at nighttime. They're very diligent, and they'll drive on the beach, and if they see properties with lights on, in terms of if it illuminates the beach, they will either send something the next day, or sent a letter, or we've had before, historically, I think they've gotten better. I know Timbers has gotten better. We used to have problems with Timbers, and we work with their property management companies to make sure that those drapes or blinds are closed, or if the owners are not there to turn the lights out. So we probably can do a little bit more, but we do push stuff out before turtle season, and then we continue to be vigilant during turtle season.
Thank you.
Our communications teams from the town and Kika do talk to one another, and Kika's been very good about pushing out a lot of the town notices as well, and I think they had actually, with regard to the commencement of the turtle season and regulations associated with that as well. But can we always do more? Sure.
Thank you.
That's it. Any other questions? We have no items of old business. The first item of new business is an issue we had discussed previously, but we'd actually not considered on first reading. That's ordinance 2025-23 to amend the parking regulation, section 12128. Mr. Taylor will explain kind of where we are. It's been an evolutionary process, a lot of engagement with a number of stakeholders, including Kiawah Island Golf Resort and Mr. Warren, to try to address some legitimate issues and concerns and fill some holes in the existing ordinance infrastructure. I don't know if we want to go into public hearing first, or John, prior to that, you provide a summary and update. What do we typically do? We go into provide the background and context first? Do we want to go into, why don't you start and just kind of lay out where we are, then we can go into public hearing and get any comments.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under consideration of second reading of our modifications to minimum parking standards. This comes as recommendation from the Planning Commission at its April meeting. And what I will do is highlight the key factors of the changes that are within the particular code at this stage, and then if there's further questions, I'll go more in detail regarding the actual ordinance. But the proposed amendments to our minimum parking standards, number one, it modifies our standards for several uses that's in the code, particularly aligning residential uses specifically either to a bedroom within our multifamily designation of uses, and then specifically uses aligned with hotel and conference areas. Those were the primary uses that were discussed regarding the changes of the parking ratios impacted. It does also now implement or introduce a specific allocation regarding a guest parking factor that's associated with residential uses, and also regarding clarifying the specifications regarding hotel guest room requirements. And so that's more of a cleanup. We did work closely with the resort, providing comments and recommendations based on occupancy data and their usage patterns to help inform this particular ordinance. Additionally, one of the things that were highlighted is the shared parking concept. If you're all familiar, we've had a lot of discussions around particularly West Beach or other areas around the island of opportunities where uses are in close proximity to one another. And so the ordinance now codifies, if approved, a shared parking concept that would allow different uses in close proximity to use shared parking agreements, but they would have to meet certain criteria that's spelled out in the ordinance. And then additionally, high level, we just made some modifications regarding just consistency with ADA compliance, updates there. The only other updates that I will have is I think I mentioned there's an employee factor. If not, there's now an employee factor that's been clarified. That particular adjustment, it's predicated on not shared parking, but the allowances for reduction in the employee parking count based upon if there is a parking transition plan that incorporates a shuttle system with the proposed uses. Those are the high level, and we can go into public hearing now, I think, from an overall standpoint.
I would like to just make one correction. This is public hearing and second reading.
Correct.
Not
Oh,
public
this is
hearing.
second reading. Okay. We have discussed this before, but we
have.
did not defer. We actually approved it on first reading. Okay.
Correct. First reading was completed in October of 2025. Since then, You guys may recall, we did a workshop in December to follow, and Planning Commission's had 2 meetings subsequent to that, so.
Thank you for that refreshing of recollection. I can now recall we simply had deferred and remanded, but we actually approved on first readings, the second reading. I would entertain a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are now in public hearing. Are there any community or citizen comments in public hearing? Mr. Permar.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, and those in attendance, I'm here representing, along with Roger, the resort. We would like to emphasize that the collaborative nature of where we ended up in this was very extensive. We cross-shared a lot of information that was of historic note. We didn't select any one specific time period. It was greater than 20 years of experience that allowed the committee and the Planning Commission to consider adjustments that corresponded to real-world experience. And both of us want to make certain that we thank the Planning Commission, the staff members, and hopefully your consideration of the adjustments that were made. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Permar.
Mr. Pamar, I do have a question for you, if I could, please. With respect to the hotel, are you satisfied with the current state of the parking requirements?
As proposed.
You are?
Yes.
Okay.
Council member, it did incorporate historic references that we back-checked, and adjustments were made within a reasonable range as opposed to an extreme adjustment. So the answer to your question is yes, we are comfortable with the ratios that are proposed, and in particular, because the resort integrates a really well-thought-out transportation system for employees to take pressure off our road systems. That factor was included in a very specific way.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up, because I know you have the transportation system, because one of the new items in here is for employees to have one space per employee of the largest shift. Would your current parking be able to absorb that?
If we're looking at the same thing, there was an accounting of a percentage of the employees that were attributed to remote parking. That not all of the, if a use was a free, well, maybe, John, you might want to. Good. We'll clarify this point, okay?
Yeah, that is the standard parking ratio, but there is a guest factor in the footnotes. If you see footnote number 6, there's a minimum requirement that allows that factor to be reduced to 0.65 spaces per employee, provided that the employer transportation parking plan is approved in
Right,
coordination with
okay.
that shuttle. So
Right,
that's where
I
that
just
reduction.
But big picture, you're, as a representative of the resort, you're okay with the hotel structure?
That is correct.
Okay.
And if I could just reinforce, there was a lot of focus and attention on a scenario where, for example, for those of you who are familiar with the original West Beach Inn, the 150-room inn, that was designed that all of the uses associated with that inn were within a 5-minute walk distance so that people didn't drive to everything, golf and everything else. Since then, the resort has excellent experience with the Sanctuary Hotel of how to accommodate various aspects of attribution. So the conference facility, the restaurants, the pools, all forms of recreation and so forth. Those were accounted for in addition to this extensive experience they have with employee transportation. It sounds a little complex, but it was really well thought out. And the answer is yes. We appreciate integrating those under that scenario. The town still has standards if there are freestanding, unrelated to a hotel operation uses, where you have those uses have their own specific standards.
Great.
So it's a combination now.
Okay. Great, thank
Can I ask you a question? So, the new sidewalk and path between the West Beach Conference Center and Cougar, one is a pedestrian, that's great, but was the thinking behind that also to allow better access to the parking at Cougar for events or vice versa? Was there a thought about that?
Yes, the ultimate plan, which we hope to see sometime in the near future, will bring all of that cross-thinking together of what was positioned why and what the circulation system would be to prompt people to walk to the distances. We added a dimension of a walk distance. You know, the typical 5-minute walk distance is like 1,500 feet or so, depending upon flat land versus, so forth. We pulled that back to ensure that, for example, the conference facility, the clubhouse, the Villa Rental Check, all those uses are all well within a short walk distance. But that will be viewed in the finality of a grand vision for that location.
Thank you.
I'm glad you brought that up. Also, want to commend the spirit of cooperation and collaboration that prevailed throughout this process. Also, specifically want to commend the resort on adding that little walkway right across Kiowa Beach Parkway. We, probably too much information, we do with our dog what we call the Cougar Loop, and there's never been a way to actually cross there.
That's what we
now
do
there
too.
now there is a little walkway. I just observationally, this, I commend the Planning Commission as well and Mr. Taylor. Really two almost contradictory things that were trying to be achieved with this revisions to the parking regulations. One, we identified very specific instances in the code when it did not provide for truly adequate parking. In some cases, like some multifamily developments or townhouses and things like that. It provided adequate parking for the residents, but sometimes didn't require anything for guest parking. But what it also revealed was that we wanted to make sure the parking didn't require more hard surface parking than was needed. We didn't want to solve just for peak periods of time, because then you have a lot of hard surface. There had already been kind of a concept of shared parking that the resort had put into place. Unfortunately, our ordinance previously didn't really allow for that. It mandated that all the minimum required parking be on the site of intended use. That's what it said. Really never made sense. And this idea of shared parking or being able to use kind of overflow parking areas reflects the real world. And that's what I think we've seen in practice with resort. I think what was intended at West Beach Conference Center, the new hotel, and the Cougar Clubhouse. These revisions now specifically not only enable that, but encourage that as well.
So, Mr. Parr, you've tweaked my curiosity
Just wanna say
about a
before you guys
grand
go too much-
scheme and a grand
Yep.
plan.
I was just
Can
saying,
give
before you
us
guys go too much more discussion, we're still in public hearing, so I don't know if you want to come out of public hearing and then go into.
Okay, just responding to the public comments. That's, yes.
Is there a time frame in which we might see the grand design, the complete design? Care to elaborate on that, Mr. Ward?
No. Any other public comments? I would entertain a motion to return to regular session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're back now. I would entertain a motion for approval of the revised parking standards pursuant to 128 on second and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Now, any further questions, comments, or discussion?
I have one, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
and this is maybe for Mr. Taylor. You have a line item for swimming pool under recreation, swimming pool and food and beverage. Tell me how you think about the beach club, because that combines both a swimming pool and food and beverage.
So that use would need to be accounted for every square footage based upon what they propose, so that you would have an allocation towards pools, and then you would have an allocation of food and bev for that particular.
So both of them would apply?
Both of them would apply. You combine the two.
Great. So when you say combined, if the pool needed 50 spaces and the restaurant needed 50, it'd be 100 spaces
Correct.
required? Great, thank you.
I know it's been said, but I just want to foot stomp and emphasize the workshop and the other outreach that's happened with this. It seems we have an emerging best practice because we're doing this now with other things, where the Planning Commission is having workshops and proactively engaging key stakeholders and things like that. So I think we're getting better products because of that and better buy-in from the community. So thank you.
I know procedurally, sometimes it actually takes moving to first reading to get people to kind of focus on this is actually happening. But I think, I hope that we've demonstrated that just by moving to first reading and approving first reading does not mean that we're not open to making suggestions and taking as long as needed between first and second reading to get it right.
Yeah.
So do our best job, do our level best to do that. Any other questions, comments, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, John. Thank you all. What would I do with the agenda? I lost the agenda, Stephanie.
The budget.
Now, that was old business. Now we are on to new business. And the first item of new business is to consider approval of the town's 2026-2027 fiscal year budget. And our finance director will provide a little summary.
So, thank you. This morning, the Ways and Means recommended approval for the first reading of our 26-27 budget. And here I will. So we are projecting about 19.2 million in revenues and about 18.8 million in expenditures. That will still generate approximately 1.4 million in reserves, surplus. One thing that I want to mention, actually the Ways and Means recommended to make few changes. One change, we're going to add $25,000 to personnel cost, and we will not do transfer to capital, to emergency fund. But that doesn't have really a cash outflow result. This is just a comparison to our revenues and expenditures through the years. So you'll see that our revenues are pretty stable. Expenditures are higher, much higher this year, but this is mostly related to capital expenditures that we'll present in a moment. As far as the revenues, we showing the modest growth in permits and business licenses, about 3% to account for inflation. Pretty much stable accommodation taxes and hospitality tax, and a small decline in interest income that we will look at with the chairman for the second reading. We'll revise that. There is a small decrease in salaries and benefits. We are budgeting for 2 new FTEs. There is an increase in public safety cost due to a new contract with our beach patrol and code enforcement. There are a few placeholders for consulting services. And again, the primary increase is driven by the capital investments. And operational costs remain pretty much stable and controlled. As far as the capital expenditures, we are budgeting 1.6 million for Civic and Cultural Center, 3.7 million for conservation of Captain Sam's property if approved. And there is 200,000 for multi-use pad study or feasibility study for that project, and we budgeting to replace 2 vehicles. So now this staff is asking for, no, we're gonna go in public hearing now, I guess, right? So.
I would entertain a motion to enter public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now in public hearing, any public comments on the proposed budget on first reading? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to return to regular session.
Any questions?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I would entertain a motion for approval on first reading of the proposed fiscal year budget.
So moved?
Second.
Now, discussion, questions.
Dorota, I'm just curious, you said you were adding 2 FTEs?
No, I think they already in there. We budgeting, the 2 FTEs are already in a budget. We, for additional 2 FTEs, but we budgeted 150,000 for those 2. And with the discussion on Ways and Means, the mayor suggested to make it 175 for 2 FTEs.
Okay, my question was, what's the job responsibility for for these 2 people?
So one is the resiliency officers, or whatever the title
Director
will be.
Resiliency
Okay,
position.
so that's 1, okay.
And the second position is still, I think it's in works. We were thinking about receptionist slash, coordinator. Once the civic center is built, we will need a presence in a lobby, in the front lobby.
Well,
To replace Julie.
Well, Julie's now,
Well,
Has a
she
different-
used to be in the lobby. and now-
correct.
yeah, Stephanie, you want to? No, you can, okay, yeah, just to clarify. The one is because we had previously approved exploring the concept, and we've developed a position specification, and a lot of work has been done looking at other municipalities with respect to this director of resiliency
Yeah, no,
position.
that one-
And it's a little
yes.
bit a higher, that would be on the higher end of the pay scale.
Yeah, no, that part I
yeah.
got. but
Then
it's-
there were 2 other kind of things we
Yeah,
talked
so
about.
so the second position is not really replacing Julie per se. So this all started in terms of looking at this person helping out with other departments. It could be with administration department, it could be with communications department. But we want to have some visibility up front, so that person would sit up front, but their primary job is not a receptionist. Their primary job could be, yes, they were answering phones, but they're also assigned other responsibilities and duties. So this person right now could fall under the mayor administrator's office and be assigned projects. They can be assigned to help with ticket sales, for instance, for Arts Council. I may have special projects, the mayor may have special projects. We're always, there's departments that need assistance on a regular basis. This person's, because of the nature of the job, this person may have to have the ability to do a little bit of graphic design to help out with the communications department.
All right, so I'm not hearing the real need. I remember when we moved Julie inside, we discussed that we don't need somebody in the reception area. Now,
don't
No,
think-
we don't
I don't think
need,
we don't-
that would, I'll jump in here. We don't need somebody full-time doing that. What we have learned is we need somebody that does that. Right now, part of the operational challenge is that there's nobody out front, especially if Nay Middleton's not there, and she's actually supposed to be working for the CVB is helpful, is simply somebody rings the bell, and that happens frequently throughout the day, and then somebody's got to get up and answer that, figure out what's going on, no matter what they're in the middle of, and nobody really knows how to do that.
I have a hard time hiring somebody to answer the bell.
Just,
Is this,
Well, you have to
it's
remember.
not only for that. That would be part of the set of responsibilities.
Right.
We have ongoing
Broader.
issues with regard to management of events, for example, and ticketing related to our expanded range of Arts Council and programming events, because previously the Arts Council manager only really worked with the Arts Council. Now we've started expanding the range of arts and cultural events programming to include, like we had the night at the museum, the We're moving bobcats and bluegrass and bobcats into that function. We're moving the food truck Fridays, et cetera. We just have a greater need for additional lower, kind of entry-level program support.
Would this position cover things like we discussed at the strategic planning workshop for like some of the things that Brian and Michael are doing?
No, this is
that's not-
this
no.
is
No,
not
no,
that one.
No,
Okay.
it is almost like probably a level above like administrative assistant. Support services. We have to remember that Nay is not a town employee.
I understand.
So we can't rely on her to answer phones or be there all the time. It's great that she does help out. But the person, instead of sitting in the back with all of us, they'll be sitting up front and being able to essentially be the face and address.
They not necessarily need to sit up front.
They may.
There just may be the person's designated to
Right.
respond.
Right, yeah.
Nay is not a town employee.
No, she works for the CVB.
Charleston Visitors Bureau.
Yes, we just
I
have
didn't know that.
They've got a satellite office.
yes, that's their satellite. And over the last 10 years since I've been here, they've had a satellite office at Beachwalker and one here, and they've just been, they've allowed their employee to essentially help us with our phones, so their phone system is set up through ours, but they're not technically a town employee.
Yeah, people would be surprised at that because she's very, very helpful to anybody that walks in and
Okay. Well,
But
I
don't-
do think Russ makes a point. I think a little bit more clarity around, and specificity around what this person would be assigned to do would be helpful for me as well.
So I'm going to suggest there's not going to be a lot of certainty and clarity. It's going to be a floater, and it's going to provide program support where needed. And we just tried to identify 2 or 3 of the areas where there is a present need. Literally, things are falling through the cracks. We're not responding when people come in. This is not. It's not it's just kind of above administrative. It's not a receptionist, but it's a kind of administrative assistant support position that'll do like all, ticketing for art, help with ticketing and arts council events, help, kind of one thing after another. There's
So I understand all that. My issue is that, I guess, I'm not aware of the things that are falling through the cracks. Perhaps you are. So that's where I said in the very beginning, I'm not seeing the need.
Okay.
That
Well,
need has to be.
If you want to be here every day, then you'll see the need. I
Okay,
can
but if you-
only tell you,
Okay.
and she can only tell you
All right,
what the need
so,
is.
but you have to understand, so I'm sitting here to approve this, and I'm not seeing or hearing
Okay.
the need. So,
Well, I tried to say what the need is. Stephanie can talk about it, I can talk about it, our communications team can talk about it, Meredith can talk about it.
Okay,
Yes,
so
Petra can
let's-
talk about it.
that communication hasn't occurred. This is the first time I've
I know
heard of
it.
this additional
That's why,
person.
and that's what we're, good question, and now that's what we're saying, this is the need.
So while Mr. Berner is thinking about this, what hours does Nee work?
Same hours, 8 to 4, Monday through Friday, same as our business hours for the town.
And we pay Charleston Visitor Bureau $900,000 a year. So we're effectively paying for Nee. Can we utilize her better, notwithstanding the need for somebody? And Petra's shaking her head no. Is there,
I can't ask Nay to go in there and scan minutes and agendas and materials because she has to be up front.
why does she have to be up front?
Because when
Visitors.
visitors come in and they want information,
She's the only one that knows anything about everything behind that desk and all those, and all the Charleston Visitor
Do we
Bureau stuff.
log, or does she log how many visitors come in per day and ask for information?
Yeah, she does keep track of that. I don't have those numbers,
Okay.
but I do understand she keeps track
Okay,
of that.
you've answered my questions. Thank you.
It's not a huge number, but Charleston Visitors Bureau doesn't need to provide, have a satellite office here at all. Or we could have it located elsewhere. It's just been kind of mutually beneficial.
Well, I don't want to go too far down this path, but I'm sure, in my mind, I've come in enough times where we could probably better utilize her, notwithstanding is still the need for somebody else. But I would,
But she's not our employee. It's hard to say we can better utilize her when she's not our employee. It may be that Charleston Visitor Bureau make the decision that it's not worth her being their employee,
okay.
Yeah, and I will add, right now, she does help out a lot when she can. So as people are coming to see us, she'll typically come and let us know. She'll let them know where to sit. She'll bring them water. If she's not busy with CVB work, she'll answer our phones, or she will assist anyone that comes into the lobby if she's available to assist. So a lot of times, she does help out when she's available.
So if you can just give me an example, you said ticketing or events or whatever.
So for the arts
What is falling through the cracks with the
So,
events?
so for Arts Council, as you know, we have one event, the Arts and Cultural Manager. So as an example, there are times that if there's a special event that's going on and she has to go to the facility, she is gone, maybe could be as easy half a day sitting there because the piano has to be tuned or what have you. If ticket sales are going on, or if there's calls where people come in, yes, we have communications. We have Danielle that's working on projects, and we have Meredith. But with this person being in the front, they're able to essentially help out where they can. So Caroline may say, for this event, we have tickets that's going to go on sale. People are going to be calling. They may need help logging into the system. Could you please handle those calls, because I am either off-site trying to manage and get the event going, or Caroline can be in the office working on posters. We do, over the years, we've taken a lot off the plates of the Arts Council members. They used to be a very working committee. They still are, but we have a dedicated staff that is doing more of the load, and a lot of times that is not, and that person is not in the office. But we may need someone in the office to be able to answer and address those calls. This person is not assigned necessarily to the communications department, but they would help more of the arts piece. Caroline has repeatedly asked for staff. We feel like that at this time, that may not warrant a full-time person dedicated to that department, but clearly someone that can help her in that department. And then this person can also help with other needs that I may have, or the mayor may have, or another department may have. Such as if I'm having work that I need to pull, if I have to do some sort of report, and I need this person to help me do research, I can assign. It's almost like an intern that we've had, where you can assign roles and responsibilities for that person, and maybe one specific assignment. If we're wanting to, we had a conversation in regards to looking at Ways and Means, short-term rental numbers, and Dorota may say, I know we have Stephen, but Stephen may be busy, so they may say, while you're here, can you please make calls, or can you please help scrape, or can you please do letters? Can you stuff envelopes?
Okay.
The planning department is always sending out letters, and Daniel a lot of times sit at the copier and generate letters. This person can help do those things.
All right.
Take
I'm
off some of the
okay. All right, so
clerical
I'm okay.
stuff off from staff's
It just would have been
responsibility.
helpful moving forward. This is the first time I heard of this, so that's why
Well, but this is the first time this type of thing would come up. I mean,
well, you obviously were thinking about it, so, I mean,
We've actually discussed this in the past.
We have, yeah.
We have discussed this at prior meetings. It's just that this is the first time it's kind of in front of, but we'd already had the budget placeholder. The only thing we did earlier today, was adjust the budget placeholder for the two positions. And this is not going to be a particularly high salaried position.
Okay.
That'd be relatively
I
much
understand.
higher for the resiliency director. Because you want a qualified professional.
Qualified professional.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, I have one why are we paying our attorneys so much money? Can we get a more effective attorney or, you know?
If we kept those meetings shorter, though, they charge less.
Tom, the meetings would be so long.
They do charge by the hour,
Yes.
so.
Do they charge when the meeting starts or when they arrive?
No, they charge, they charge their travel time. So they get stuck in traffic for 2 hours, that's on our dime.
So call him when he's driving.
So maybe what we need to do is, just like the CVB, we need to have maybe Mr. Ward, who I should introduce to everybody, James Ward, who's now joined HSB, maybe like he's a Nay Middleton sitting here in the town office once a week or something like that. Then we're not paying for travel cost and he's just here, so.
The mayor needs somebody to spar with.
Yeah.
Sure, that'd be a cost savings based on what you just said, yeah.
Okay, anything else?
Well, not surprisingly, I highlighted the other uses that are allocated toward beach or environmental issues. So for instance, the 349 from lay tax?
So
The capital
that's a
fund-
local accommodation tax.
So, okay,
Those are just interfund transfers.
okay.
And
So they're
we
not-
actually
but-
touched upon those. The recommendation coming from Ways and Means was to no longer automatically make some of those interfund transfers. A prior council, I don't know how many years ago, had passed a resolution, because that resolution is still in effect. That is what that has been done in prior budgets, is to automatically move a certain percentage of accommodation tax funds into these other labeled funds. They're just labels.
So yeah, my question is there anything I need to know about projects that this money is being allocated for? Or are we just shifting some funds at this
This
point?
is just shifting them. The capital outlays are the projects. We have a placeholder in the budget for $200,000 for conservation-related initiatives. And then we have,
Is that the same thing as future beach nourishment and capital projects?
No.
Okay,
no,
I missed it then.
no. That is a specific identified budget now item. But again, it's a placeholder. In the past, for example, when we did the Conservancy came to us with the manufactured wired reefs project. It's, things of that, but are not specifically now identified. There are a lot of instances, even this year, where we've had some placeholder items, which we simply haven't ended up
Meeting we've
expending
got.
them.
Okay, Stefan,
Okay.
I'm understanding where you're coming
Yeah.
from. Thank
So-
you.
Do you have another question, Madeline, or can I ask you?
No, I'm good.
Okay, so in the Ways and Means Committee meeting, we talked about, since we're on this interfund transfers, I asked the question about why are we transferring money to an emergency fund from both L-tax and from the hospitality tax. And it was explained to me emergency funds were, for storm cleanup and things like that generally. We talked about the biggest expense we'd ever incurred was either $600,000 or $900,000, but we have $4 million into this emergency fund. I have a concern that you transfer it, but it still is required to be spent like the rules say in L-tax. And for me, now the emergency fund is $4 million, more than 4 times what we've ever spent. I would rather not do any more transfers until that fund gets drawn down a lot. So we talked about having a resolution to stop the transfers from L-tax and from hospitality tax to this emergency fund. This has been done by a resolution way back when nobody could remember. And so my suggestion is to stop that transfer. You still have the money, again, it's just which pool do you hold it in? And I'm of the view that we want to hold it in the fund that has the restriction so it's clear what we can spend it on. So Should I make a resolution request now, or how do we accomplish that, Mr. Mayor?
I would think that we would have a resolution presented in conjunction with second reading, prior to second reading, next council meeting. It doesn't require, it'd be simply a resolution, so it's simply a vote. There's no first and second reading of the resolution. Is all we would effectively be doing is rescinding the prior resolution, which required the interfund transfer. This would simply say, now there's no required interfund transfer. The funds stay there unless and until a future council decides to make that. And at the point, there was certainly a point in time where that made sense, but you kept kind of doing it automatically. As a result, we now have $4 million in the emergency fund, kind of storm cleanup, when the most we've ever expended. There was some discussion whether it's 600,000 or
Right.
$1
And
million.
this all came about in Dorota Police, correct me if I'm wrong. I want to say this came about when, actually, by John Wilson, when he was on council, or was Craig Weber, and it was because of, I believe it was Matthew. So in Hilton Head, they took a huge hit, and we were going around looking to see how much with the cost, not sure what FEMA was going to cover. And I think the concern was, if we're impacted like that, do we have the resources to be able to? We know we can possibly get reimbursed back, but Hilton Head, one of the things that they said is that it took a while for them to get reimbursed back, so they had to, I think they temporarily raised property tax, because they have property tax there, but that was kind of the history behind it, of why this was that
Yeah,
kind of?
yes, and that was
in my
Mayor
memory?
Weaver that,
Yeah, Mayor Weaver, but John Wilson was over
Yeah,
one of,
finance, the Ways and Means.
So is all the money in the emergency fund from L-tax and hospitality tax sources?
Yes.
Okay, so that whole fund is
That whole fund is a restricted fund.
restricted fund.
And as we discussed earlier today, exactly what kind of storm cleanup could be utilized out of that and what couldn't is a question that would have to be explored at a future time.
So I would like to see that you put together a resolution to cancel the old resolution.
Okay.
$4 million seems enough, even if it got drawn down to 2. We've got funds in other places to do
It
the same
doesn't
thing.
change the growth.
Doesn't change anything.
The growth trajectory of the restricted funds in any way, shape, form, or fashion.
Right, it's just how we're bucketing.
It's kind of interesting. One might have thought that you would have been allocating a small portion of the unrestricted funds into that type of fund in the past, so that you wouldn't have any issues with regard to its use, but we are where we are.
And like we discussed this morning, if there is a devastating event, we're going to take the actions we need to take anyhow, the right ways.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
to
back
state
when this
law.
was done, I'm not sure what our total reserves, restricted and unrestricted, were at the time that this was done, but they were a fraction of what they are now.
Sure, yeah. So
There was a legitimate
the general-
concern about whether the town had the resources at all to respond to a catastrophic event. As we've gone through with our reserve study exercise and everything else, we clearly do now.
Any other questions?
Just a couple of other general, observations. Again, this is by intent of design, always has been and is continuing to be a fairly conservative budget. Historically, revenues have come in Dorota's been pretty careful. They tend to come in a little bit higher than budgeted. And expenditures, we use some placeholders for potential projects that don't necessarily get realized in the course of the fiscal year. So expenditures come in less than budgeted. And as a result, we've continued to substantially increase reserves year over year. The budgeted increase in reserve this year is a little bit less. But for example, if the Sam Spitz settlement doesn't happen, then all of a sudden, unless we fill it otherwise, there's a $3.7 million
extra.
further surplus.
And just maybe to amplify that just minutely further, we were concerned early in the year about potentially the fact that vacation tourism wouldn't be as high this year. We got some early readings from end of last year, beginning of this year, so we were even more conservative maybe than we would have been And later anecdotal evidence, more recent, has been that that might not be the case. In fact, tourism may be up, so we might be even in a better shape. But we're still
That's
taking
kind
this
of what
approach to be
You
conservative.
got a little bit as the patronage, is whether it's just Johns Island or general, but we also, this, as reported earlier, the short-term rental license, the number of licenses continued. So we're still having the same, essentially the same number of rooms available to rent throughout the year on the island. Rates have gone up a little bit, somewhat, that has increased some, and then you probably get a little bit more of this hospitality tax revenues that are not necessarily associated with overnight accommodations. That may be people come Lower Johns Island frequenting restaurants here.
Well, judging what I see in my backyard, the number of golfers is way up this year,
Oh, it sure is.
way up.
Trying to get tee times is
Yeah.
increasingly difficult because of that. But yeah, the
Oh, yeah.
parade of people in my backyard is constant.
Lots more golf junkets.
Yeah.
So,
The one other thing we talked about was our investment income. We had taken down in anticipation of interest rates falling further. Recent developments with a new Fed chair being appointed, and the market changing and pricing in zero chance of another ease this year through the end of the year. Probably as rates stay here, maybe move higher. But that's probably going to result in probably higher than expected interest return for this year. So that's a good thing too. More revenue
And I
coming
do
in.
want to come back to a point that Councilmember Berner mentioned, because we've had this conversation before. I've always been generally the same mind, be very judicious about kind of increasing your permanent operating cost base. And let's keep fairly tight control of that. If we have specific projects that are one-offs and we have available resources, whether through revenues or drawing down on a reserve, that's one thing altogether. But just because we have money doesn't mean that we necessarily want to increase the permanent operating cost base.
Correct.
And I think we've been, as a council as a whole, again, pretty judicious in that regard. And so that's, mindful of your
I keep challenging.
comments about, adding any headcount. I get that. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? We have a motion pending. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dorota.
Thanks, Dorota.
Next on agenda items under tab 7, which is approval of the Trident waste rate adjustment. I don't know if, Brian, you want to come up, or Mr. Chairman, if you want to talk about what the Ways and Means Committee recommended to council?
Come on up, Ron. Let me find, it's not one in my book here, so.
You want me to take that?
So while Brown's walking up, Trident has requested a 3% increase from current contract rates. We analyzed what the worst-case potential would be for that, not what it would be, but the worst-case potential. And the worst-case potential would be with a 3% increase, it could be as high as $105,000 and change. But the total increase is approximately $65,000 from that. And this is basically for inflationary issues related to their services, notwithstanding the fact that energy has gone up pretty dramatically in the last couple of months. So that's the summary. What else did I leave out?
No, that's about it. And just kind of for clarification, the 3%, it's based off of the amount of different types of services that are across the island. So that rate, or that actual number, will fluctuate as new homes come online with trash service, or as people change their level of service from backdoor, curbside, or vice versa. But as Mr. Farrell explained, we're anticipating the total cost to be about $65,000 increase to the current contract.
Just for residential and does not have anything to do with commercial rates that other folks are paying.
Correct. And it also does include the beach.
Beach service,
Yeah. Yeah, so the beach was easy to figure out, 3%, because that's a fixed rate that we have on the beach. So the residential and the beach is what's included in the approximate $65,000 increase.
So, Mr. Mayor, do we need to go have a vote first before I ask my questions? Is that the way this works?
Would need to entertain a motion. It would be appropriate to
Okay.
have a motion pending to approve the requested rate adjustment to the Trident Waste contract before having discussion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make that motion.
All right, so moved.
There was already a motion, or would you like to second?
Oh, second, I'm sorry. I was thinking.
Okay, then questions or discussion?
I have two questions and they're related. Is this an annual rate increase? Followed up by, does his contract have a force majeure clause that he can then get an additional rate increase due to the increased fuel?
So to answer the first question, yes. In the contract, they have the ability to request a rate adjustment. And it's up to the council, or the Ways and Means Committee and council ultimately to approve that or not. So this is the first time that they've come to, well, I should say, this is the first time that it's been presented to Ways and Means Committee and council since they took on the contract in about 2 years ago, April of 2024, that they're asking for the.
Okay, so is there a force majeure clause that would allow him to get a second bite of a price increase due to the price of oil gone up so dramatically?
There's nothing that binds us to give them, I mean, anybody, he could always come and say, hey, we need to increase this because of whatever reason, but it's ultimately up to the council to approve or deny that.
Right, so you're not, I don't have the contract and I don't recall what's in it, so because of the recent fuel price increase that's very dramatic, he then can't come back, is what I'm hearing, for an additional rate increase for fuel.
No. Simple answer, no.
Well, not to say that I'd have to take a look at the
He can
contract.
ask.
Well, yeah, he can
Always ask, but there's
But-
nothing that obligates the council to
That's what I was asking,
grant
there's a
him.
force majeure clause, because if there's force majeure, he can come back and ask for any kind of price increase related to some sort of unanticipated event.
And then in that case, we guess we would consider whether or not that would be an appropriate adjustment.
All right, so do you know if this is for, his request is for fuel as part of it, or is it just cost of living?
It's CPI, it's across the board.
It's an inflation, it's a
Yeah.
service, increased cost of service.
It's not for one specific resource or anything, it's a cost of living increase.
And the reason I mentioned fuel is clearly they drive big trucks, they drive far, so fuel is going to be a big component
No, I
of
know,
their
so before you
cost,
even brought
so-
it up, I had that in my mind already, because I was wondering if he's then gonna ask for an additional increase.
Well, they still have labor, they still have equipment,
No, I said,
depreciation, other benefits.
I understand,
I'm surprised that, the reason I was happy to support this is a 3%.
I'm not saying not to give him the 3%.
No, I know, but
I
it was
just-
only a 3% increase over the last 2 years.
Yeah, I was wondering if there's gonna be an additional increase coming down the road for fuel.
We don't know, and I guess we can just to consider whether or not, if that request is made, to entertain that or not.
All right, enough said.
The one minor little thing, just a note, it's not a big issue, but Dorota addressed this a little part. Just recall that we are subsidizing about $1 million worth of trash management services. The town doesn't pass along all the cost of the trash service. We generate revenues, but the expenses associated with the contract are greater than that. This is effectively absorbing what would be estimated to be at about additional $65,000 in subsidy for all intents and purposes, rather than passing the additional cost on to our customers. Any other questions or comments? We have a motion pending. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Next agenda item is a design review board appointment. I don't know if, John, we need any discussion here. Mr. Fainza? His materials are in the book.
Before you is consideration, members of council, of second appointee to the Design Review Board. You recall we did appoint Mr. Bill Marshall at our last month's meeting. This has been a slow walk for us in considering what I would call pertinent qualified individuals for the Design Review Board. Mr. Mark Fenza is a longtime builder on Kiowa, second generation, who's very familiar with the island. His recommendation is supported by also Mr. Bill Marshall as well. The one thing I would just add regarding the criteria for the Design Review Board members, we really wanted a cross-section, not just all architects or all landscape architects. We wanted to be able to have a builder also represented on the board, and so this would fit that bill regarding having someone in a construction background serve on a Design Review Board.
Thank you, John. My only question really was whether or not there be potential conflicts and how that.
So we, similarly, if there is a specific project, then we would ask that person to recuse himself if there's a direct impact like we do any other board appointee.
Is he the only applicant considered
Today, correct.
today?
Yes.
Okay.
What is Mr. Marshall's background again?
He's an architect.
Architect, that's right.
And this is a 3-year appointment.
I would entertain a motion for approval of Mr. Faines's appointment.
So moved. Second.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Now, the last new business agenda item is to consider approval of the settlement concerning the pending litigation matter, the appeal of the Board of Zoning Appeals decision. I would entertain a motion for approval of the settlement. Okay. Not going to have any discussion? Okay.
Approving it.
There's no motion, there's no second, therefore, there is no approval of the settlement. Okay? We now move on to citizen comments on any agenda item, any matter. Any citizen comments? No citizen comments. Council member comments? Any council member comments?
I have one. I just want to, again, give a shout out to Shannon White and the KICA staff for a spectacular event for the KICA's 50th birthday party at Sandcastle. I saw you there. Well, I think everybody there. It was truly a really nice surprise and a great event. Organized, hosted, delivered with, I can't say enough about it. It was really, really well done. So again, kudos to Shannon White, the board, and really Ms. White's staff. Thank you.
Any other comments? I would entertain a motion then for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Second. We are adjourned.